Hello everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for finding us once again for another weekly dose of encounters with the world of the bizarre, the unexplainable, and the paranormal. I hope these stories can provide some mental escape from the harshness of the world, and some relaxation for you folks with our broadcast tonight. Whether you enjoy our broadcast leisurely, while working, or even while going to bed, we appreciate you listening tonight. Tell me, have any of you or anyone in your family encountered stories of witches or bizarre encounters? Today's video will focus on a selection of stories about the terrifying and mystifying encounters with witches and other strange occurrences in Mexico and other Latin American countries. Also, before we start, do you have any stories you want featured on the channel? If you have any stories or encounters you'd like me to narrate, you can send them to me to my email on screen or also in the description below, or on my Instagram and send me a message there with your story. Okay guys, we're going to go on to the stories we have for you tonight. I hope you guys enjoy and let's explore the darkness together. Good afternoon. I write this more to give the feeling of letting go, but this can be used to try and scare someone else. I come from a family that has gone through a lot of supernatural things, as I'm told that my maternal grandfather made a pact, which ended up causing our family to end up linked to many of these things. In my case in particular, not many things have happened to me directly. For some reason, all these things kind of elude me. And even when I'm close to my family members who have had such experiences happen to them, they scold me when I ask why nothing has happened to me. Since they tell me that it's nothing fun, not something that one should look for. In total, the only thing that has happened to me directly was on 3 occasions, just when I was a child. Today, I am 36 years old. The first thing was that my aunts, my mom, and at the time my grandmothers, both of which are unfortunately no longer with us, have told me that the witches tried to kidnap me when I was a newborn. Of those 2 attempts, there are 2 specific ones that have always caused me fear because of the what if factor. The first one was when I was 6 months old. At that time, my parents lived at my paternal grandmother's house, in a room that they had just made in the back of the house. My grandparents' house was small at the time, but the land was quite large. What happened at that time was that my mom woke up scared because she said she didn't feel me in the bed, since I was placed in between the 2 of them. And she started shouting, "My child! They have taken my child!" And at that time, all those who were in the house started looking for me. I've never been told who exactly they were, but one of them ran out to the front of the house, and there I was, 1 or 2 meters from the front door, without crying, without any damage, totally asleep. But they tell me that I had urinated, and that's why they left me. The second occasion was when I was about 1 year old. At that time, my mom and a paternal aunt had gone to visit my maternal grandmother. And while my mom was going in to leave all the things, diaper bag, stroller, and all that, my aunt stayed outside. And then she saw 2 women. One she describes as very tall and thin, almost 2 meters, and the other as smaller, maybe 1.5 meters, and very, very fat. Both dressed totally in black. They were very far away from her. She tells me that it's at least 50 meters away. And they told her, "Give us the child. Give him to us or else you will also suffer." My aunt tells me that she's very afraid, and that she felt how they pulled her towards her. But my aunt began to pray to God. You see, most of my family are Christian, and she says that after a few minutes, which for her felt like hours, she felt that someone pulled her back and forced her into my grandmother's house. And at that time, when everyone saw her, She had her arms and legs full of scratches, and that she told them they wanted the child. I didn't want to give him to them, and they scratched me. It took her a while to calm down, and after that, relatively nothing happened to me. The third one happened to me when I was about 4 years old. I was a little more aware of the things around me. We were still living at my paternal grandmother's house, and on that occasion, my mom was pregnant with my brother. I was still sleeping in the middle of my parents. I guess that made them feel safer. And on that occasion, it was about 6 in the morning. You see, I always woke up very early when I was a child, and I remember that I stayed in the middle of them, since they told me not to move from the bed until they woke up. So I got up. My mom was about almost 9 months pregnant, or at least I think so, because I could notice her pregnant belly, and I saw a light passing outside the room. Even though we had thick curtains, I could see the light. It was very powerful, since I was seeing it even though it was through the wall that had no window. But for some reason, I could see it without hurting my eyes. And I saw how that light landed just outside where my mother was, and crossed the wall and got on top of my mom. I never saw any specific feature in that light, but I felt that it had a face. I saw how it looked at me, then at my brother, or at least that's what I felt, and then at me again, like that for several times. Then it went around the room and left. It never scared me, but I felt it was something weird. Also, I have many more anecdotes, although not exactly mine, but from my cousins and uncles. If you'd like, I can tell them too. I hope you like them. When I was in elementary school, there was a classmate whose name was, we'll say Pedro. I will not say his name for the safety of his family. Pedro was with me from first grade to third grade, when he died after being sick for almost 4 months. He was an overweight boy, and many children made fun of his physique. He was not my friend, but I felt a little empathy for him, since I didn't have many friends either. I was never very popular, nor very social. Near the end of second grade, he was telling me that his neighbor was a witch, and that he was very afraid of her, afraid that she would do something to him or his family. In the end, it turned out she was indeed a witch and disappeared as such. When he started the third year of elementary school, I saw that Pedro had lost a little weight. Well, there was 2 months of vacation. Many children go on vacation, but some stay to work to help their parents, either with housework or some job to generate some income and help economically. But this was the case of Pedro. Some children commented that his parents were bullies for putting him to work so young. "He's just a child," they would say. On one occasion, he approached me. It was a little before the Mexican Independence Day parade, and told me that no, his neighbor was not a witch at all, that they were now friends, and that in fact he was working with her to help his parents with the household expenses. "She's even helped me with my weight," said Pedro as he touched his belly with both hands, tapping it gently as if it were a drum. The Independence Parade passed, then the dances for the Revolution, and now Pedro looked thinner. Even 2 girls, Yolanda and Claudia, the most popular of the third years, fought because they wanted to be Pedro's companion in the traditional dance. On that occasion, they had chosen La Segunda de Rosales to dance. By the time of December and his posadas arrived, Pedro's physique was more than thin. Now that he looked more tired, always with dark circles under his eyes, it seemed he was working too much, or maybe he had started to become exhausted from the work, and it had become a habit. His mother had begun to worry and forbade him to continue working with Elizabeth, the witch of the 3rd grade, as some of the kids in elementary used to call her. But Pedro refused to stop working for her, saying that he had helped them, and that since she was preparing his breakfast and dinner, he felt better with his body. "I don't want to eat that junk food I always ate with you," Pedro told his mother. Since both parents worked, they had left money for the older brothers to buy gorditas and burritos for breakfast or pizza and hamburgers for dinner. "Now that I'm eating well, I feel better, and with the vitamins that Lisa gives me, now I feel more energetic." And he was right, as his brothers continued to have weight problems. Pedro went from becoming a come lunches, or an overeater, to a carita, a handsome person, in less than 3 months. But now, by December, his haggard appearance had stripped him of that carita title for the Love and Friendship Day gift exchange. The girls in the group didn't know how to leave him out, as he now looked cadaverous. It's amazing how cruel children of that age can be, but there was no need to leave him out, as in early February he stopped attending classes, as he did not have the strength to get out of bed. I didn't see him, but the teacher of our class went to visit him, and one time during recess I heard her commenting to the teacher of the other 3rd grade classes how he looked. "He looks like a skeleton," my teacher said. "Maybe he's drugged with some solvent, because he looks really bad. His skin is gray and his eyes are yellow, his hair is ashy. I think I had nightmares on some occasions, just imagining the appearance of the one who I'd once known as my friend Pedro." His family didn't have the resources to put him in a hospital, as he spent his last days at home. Some of us children, full of morbid curiosity, would pass by Pedro's house on our bicycles just because the older children told us that we could hear the poor boy's screams of pain. We pretended that one of us had dropped our bicycle chains or needed a repair right in front of the house to see if we could hear his voice, his screams. But later we find out that it was a lie, because Pedro didn't have the strength to utter a word. We were there in front of his house when I saw her, the witch Elizabeth, the witch of the 3rd. She was going up the outside stairs to go up to her apartment. She was carrying some cans in her hands, and I looked at her, and she looked at me, and I felt something. A cold afternoon in March 1998. At my 8 years of age, I didn't know much about body language. Now, I am a psychotherapist, and I could interpret more. But in her gaze, there was no expression. The witch woman, she felt nothing. The child she had almost adopted was dying 2 houses next door and one across the street, like a knight's move in chess. Pedro was dying and she didn't care. She was never known to support his parents. This I found out later. Nor did she visit him. Nothing. By the time the 3rd year was coming to an end, Pedro's parents came to talk to the school principal. They were asking for help because Pedro had died the night before in his sleep. That night, the witch disappeared, as any witch would do. The autopsy of the child revealed that for some time he had been poisoned, but as his parents never took him to a doctor, perhaps for fear of the questions they would ask, or maybe because they didn't have the economic resources to do so, they never knew. The witch left her house and was never heard from again. Although she was not a witch, as we know in movies or stories, the children in my neighborhood will always be afraid of the witch who murdered an innocent child. I have a story that didn't happen to me, but to my brother and cousin. It turns out that we went on a vacation with my grandparents to a hidden village in Oaxaca. I must say that it was a very lovely experience, and I would like to repeat it again. Well, the point is that to get to my grandparents' house, you had to go through a dirt road that almost no one traveled. My grandparents' house was about 50 meters from the edge of a hill at the end of the road. This happened on January 1st at dawn, when the celebration was over and only my uncles, parents, and grandparents were left talking. It is worth mentioning that my grandparents had two houses, one where they lived and where the kitchen was, and the other was where there was only 2 rooms for visitors. Well, our room had a wooden door that led to the end of the road, and it was only tied by a shoelace. My brother, my cousin, and I were playing at our room at about 2 a.m. Since there was no internet or phone signal, we decided to play a board game. Suddenly, I felt like drinking water, so I got up and headed to the other house where everyone was gathered, but not before making a joke to my cousins and my brother, telling him, "Don't let him go out, Momo." I didn't want to go through the wooden door in front of my room because I was too lazy to open it, but I went out the other door. But when I went through the wooden door of the room, I noticed a strange vibration, like when a predator sees a prey. I got scared because I thought it was a wild animal, and I quickly entered the house. I grabbed a glass and I quickly entered the house. I grabbed a glass and went to pour myself some water, but just as I was about to go out to the laundry room where they had the drinking water, my cousins and brother were running in. When I asked them what happened, my cousin told me something that has left me thinking until today. He told me that shortly after I left, someone or something knocked on the door in front of the room, but the difference was that it was knocking desperately, as if it had been chased by something. My brother thought it was me, so he said, "I know it's you, don't scare us." But at that, my mom's voice was heard asking me, "Where's your brother?" in the other house. They both tell me that after they had heard my mom's and my brother's conversation, the thing that was outside peeked through a crack in the wooden door. I don't even want to imagine how scared they were when they saw a red eye looking at them. From what my brothers tell me, to this day, but it wasn't a common eye, but one like a dragon. Scared, my brother and my cousin ran out, entered through the door and where the laundry room was. Upon hearing that, my body bristled, as moments before I felt a strange presence heading to that wooden door. After hearing that, my grandfather got up from where he was and ran to the edge of the hill, pronouncing some words in Nahuatl, almost shouting them. When he returned, he advised us to go to sleep and not go out at all at night, and if we did go out, we should be accompanied by an adult. We obeyed and went to sleep. The next morning we all got up for breakfast, and he told us that many years ago, during the time of the Spaniards, several local Indians were shot and thrown into that ravine. The Indians didn't have justice and became spirits that wandered around looking for a soul with Spanish blood to take revenge on, usually taking the souls of children. That is why my grandfather ran out to that side of the house to pronounce some words that were said. "Leave them alone, they do not belong to you," several times. Hearing this frightened us, but my grandmother told us that we didn't have to be afraid, since my grandfather had scared them away. It was a very strange experience that I lived, but it still leaves me thinking that I was lucky not to be taken by that spirit. I am skeptical about these things, but sometimes they told me things that leave you thinking about my country, El Salvador. Some people believe a lot in that, to the point that there are witches' stalls in some markets, or so they say, I can assure you. For example, my great aunt, may she rest in peace, frequented a supposed witch a lot. And since my son was part of a gang in the area where they lived, these gangs are no joke. I don't know if my uncle even ever killed anyone, but according to my dad, he was already leader of the gang. The thing is that for a crime that I don't know, they ended up arresting him. I don't know the details. I don't know if he was sued or if his crime was serious, but it was something delicate. And as I said, she began to frequent a witch. She did everything she could to help in the case of my uncle. Ritual acts that had to do with pagan things, or I don't know about witchcraft, but my dad always accompanied her to that place and constantly asked for holy water in the church. Why? I don't know. Here begins the weird part of the story. In those days, strange things began to happen in the house at night. Steps were heard on the stairs, but strange steps, as if instead of the normal cadence of steps, it seemed like someone was jumping from one step to another. The dog howled and cried. You know that weird sound that dogs make when they get desperate or agitated? And the most curious thing is sometimes you could hear the song of an owl, where the avocado tree was in the corner of the house, and what's so strange about that? Well, according to what they say, those who practice witchcraft, witches can take the forms of animals, like owls or pigs, or adopt relatives that are like their pets. The worst thing is that my room was near that damn tree, and I was about 10 years old, and I've always been a big coward, and you can imagine the torment. And some other weird things, like sometimes you could hear someone stirring the water in the mini pond that was in the garden. Or sometimes the windows would light up as if someone was pointing a lamp. My sister was the girlfriend of the next door neighbor at the time. And once they agreed that when my sister told him, he would go out to see what the fuck was that. But just as he looked out, the light disappeared, and they told me about it a week later. With how scared I was, and still am, they didn't want to scare me at the time. The thing is that after several encounters with that witch, they did something special that was supposed to help my uncle to get out of the problems he was in, or so it was. But it is supposed that the price of that act was very big. Besides the money they paid to the witch, of course, she told them, in the given case that someone close to you dies, you must bring flowers of a certain color 3 weeks later. And don't believe me if you want, but a week later, my uncle's lawyer died. I don't know much of the story because I was a kid who only thought about the next chapter of Dragon Ball or Ben 10. It is possible that the lawyer died of an illness, but if so, they would have commented on it sometime, and I never asked about it again. I have a witch story from Mexico. It happened to my dad when he was younger. He and some friends decided to go camping, and I forgot where he said it was, but it was somewhere in the mountains outside of Mexico City. They stopped at a small town for supplies and then headed up the mountain. They set up their campsite and started a fire. Then one of the friends took out a bottle of tequila they had swiped from his parents. It was, according to him, to help stay warm in the cold night. As they sat there by the fire, they started to see some strange lights in the other mountains. They were not cars because they were traveling up and down the mountain, and not as if they were following a road or anything. They were too low to the plains. My dad and his friends watched for a while, and then things got scary. Everything got pitch black. Even with the campfire, my dad said you could barely see it in front of you. Then they were gripped by an overwhelming sense of fear, a panic like they had never felt before. One of his friends, he grabbed a couple of sticks and fashioned a crucifix out of them. They all gathered around it praying before finishing off the tequila and passed out. In the morning, they decided to leave for home. They stopped at a small town for breakfast and began to tell the locals what they had seen. One of them told the guys that they had been around witches. You see, witches were known to be in the area. The lights were meant to distract them, and the further away they appeared, the closer the witches were. The fear they all felt was meant to disorient them and make them easy prey. They were told that they were lucky to have made it back alive at night. My grandpa told me this story over the weekend when they came up to visit my family. He's from a small town in Mexico where almost everyone owns acres of land, where they grow wheat, barley, and corn. But the lands are located on the lower part of a town, since the town is located on a hill. You have the top part of the town, the middle, and then the downside. It's mainly a dirt road with oak and mesquite trees, usually covering the acres. Anyways, my grandpa and his uncle had to go down to water the crops. They used water that comes down from the river to water them. And if they wanted the good type of water, they had to go at midnight. So my grandpa headed down with a flashlight and machete on hand, walking down the dirt road. He said he was meeting his uncle down there. Once he got there, his uncle wasn't there yet, so he lied on the grass, waiting for his uncle and the water. He was looking up at the sky and the huge oak trees when he said he heard something, and while looking up he saw a shadow darker than the night. It stood out. He said it was flying from tree to tree, and every time he wanted to flash it, the flashlight wouldn't turn on. He said it flew by 4 times when he heard footsteps and got up really quick, and it was his uncle. The uncle asked him if the water had come down yet, to which my grandpa replied no. Then he asked him if he had seen or heard anything weird on his way here, and my grandpa told him what just happened. That's when my uncle told him that when he was walking down the road, he saw a dark figure. He was just staring at it, and then the figure got bigger, and it took off flying towards my grandpa's direction. They believed it was a witch in the form of a lechuza, an owl, since several people from the town had seen it before. Probably not that scary, but it was creepy indeed and gave me goosebumps as he was telling it.